Everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. I thought I don't often spend enough time going into what's going on in the UK, so I thought this would be a good chance to do it. They have a relatively new Labour leader, a few months now, Sir Keir Starmer, which is very tough to say if you're Sean Connery. Sir Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer is taking over as Labour leader, and there's a great article in the Gray Zone by Matt Kennard, which you should definitely check out, asking questions of Keir Starmer as to his background, what he stands for, where he comes from. And it brings up, even though it's phrased as like questions, it brings up a lot of important issues with his past that people are not talking about. Now, for those of you who maybe don't follow UK stuff that much, this is a basically they had a similar situation to what happened in the US, where there was kind of a battle for the Democratic Party in the US between people that were actually progressive like Bernie Sanders and the Democratic corporate establishment. And so they rigged the primaries two elections in a row, and made sure that Bernie Sanders could not take over the Democratic establishment, could not take over the Democratic Party, because then they might actually stand for something. And that is ridiculous. I don't know what he was thinking. But so they rigged it in many ways, right? They put forward intelligence candidates. They rigged each primary. They had Obama jump in and say, hey, everybody drop out of the race so that Joe Biden can take over. They did all that shit to make sure that there could not be a shift. Now, something similar went down in the Labour Party in the UK. You had Jeremy Corbyn, an actual progressive, an actual left-wing person who stood for a lot of great things, including Palestinian rights and stuff like that. And he was similar to the way Bernie Sanders was tarnished with the neo-McCarthyism, Russians got him. He visited Russia once, evil. They did the same thing with Jeremy Corbyn, just with anti-Semitism. They just made up shit. He said Palestinians deserve to live. What? Anti-Semite. So they did the similar stuff to that. But there was an actual rift in the Labour Party, where they had the kind of corporatist establishment people trying to make sure that Corbyn did not keep power, that he was pushed out, that he did not become prime minister. And they did everything they could. They had the mainstream media with them, etc. And they succeeded. And actually, I think I brought it to you before a while back that texts were revealed showing that even people at the higher levels of the Labour Party were making sure to undermine Jeremy Corbyn. They viewed the Labour leader as the enemy of the Labour Party because he was not part of the kind of corporate establishment. And so they ultimately succeeded, as with Bernie Sanders. They pushed him out. They defeated him. They took back control. And so now here you have Keir Starmer, who's taken over. And here are the questions that Matt Kennard, who knows a lot more about UK politics than I do, has posed for Keir Starmer and his past. Here's number one. Why did you meet with the head of MI5, the Domestic Security Service, for informal social drinks in April 2013, the year after you decided not to prosecute MI5 for its role in torture? So Keir Starmer used to be the director of public prosecutions in the UK. So it was his job to decide whether to prosecute MI5 for the torture revelations that had come out. And he was like, not really. And this is incredibly unusual for them to meet for casual drinks with MI5. But clearly he's close with MI5, which is like being close with, the CIA or FBI here in the US. And so he's buddy with them, made sure to not prosecute them, made sure to prop up the remaining UK empire that still exists. But it gets worse than that. Keir Starmer's connections to the deep state, which, by the way, for those of you who are a little scared of the term deep state because Trump uses it a lot now, guess what? It was around before Trump, all right? He did not come up with this idea. It's the idea that there is a system beneath the presidency that you don't see, that's kind of behind closed doors, that makes sure that things like the military-industrial complex continue to run unfettered, no matter who's in the White House. And we've seen a lot of that, right? It hasn't really changed. And if Bernie Sanders were to have become president, we would have seen it more aggressively. The deep state has been around for a long time. The deep state is who killed JFK because he was threatening the CIA, threatening the kind of U.S. empire, perpetual war machine. And so they're the ones that took out JFK. Also, same with MLK and RFK and all the FKs. Well, I guess MLK is not FK. But it's clear it exists, and it's just existed for a long time. That doesn't mean the president doesn't have any power, but it means there is a deeper system at work. And this was talked about long before Trump was president. It's just something he's latched onto because it is easy for him to kind of fight against. And he's not wrong that there's a internal movement against him. But there's also the argument on the other side, which is like, hey, don't be fascist then, right? So there is that. But anyway, so here's a question from Matt Kennard at the Gray Zone. When and why did you join the Trilateral Commission? And what does your membership of this intelligence-linked network entail? Now, the Trilateral Commission has been around for a long time. It's an organization which was set up in 1973 by American billionaire David Rockefeller, who was then chairman and chief executive of Chase Manhattan Bank. So it was created by the king of bankers. And its stated aim was as a discussion group. Oh, yes, a discussion group among massive war criminals and central bankers. You know how they discuss things? They just get together and it's just a fun chit-chat, Just shoot the shit. Talk about what good-looking ladies were walking down the street or good-looking men, depending on their preference. But its stated aim was to be a discussion group to foster closer cooperation between Japan, Western Europe, and North America. Now, closer cooperation, what does that mean? Well, the Trilateral Commission is often given credit for the shift that took place in the 70s to make sure to destroy and end any remaining hippie movement, any movement towards people caring about each other, and really get back to a business-oriented world that is purely for profit, that is purely, gross domestic product, that kind of thing. And they put out a paper called The Crisis of Democracy, which is well known. You can go back, you can read it. It is largely seen as kind of the treatise that precipitated the shift and it basically what it says is that, and it was multiple countries, but led by Americans, American billionaires and millionaires, I guess. But it said that there's a crisis of democracy. Like democracy is causing a crisis. Too many people are having their voices heard. There is too much democracy. The people actually get together and they're demanding things and they're getting them. And the paper actually laments that, back Truman used to be able to rule by just talking to a couple of very rich men, very rich white men, and that was all he needed. You get those 5 guys in line, make sure that's all what they want, and boom, you got your shit done. And so they were lamenting that now, all of a sudden, there's these pesky people, millions upon millions of Americans or people in other countries that are voting for things and actually getting some of them to happen and standing for things that are anti-business, that are for helping people, that are not just profit-based, that are not just greed-based. And so we need to figure out how to stop that. And some of the things they said was the media needs to go back to kind of fawning on our every word, just being a stenographer for the State Department, which we've seen that shift happen, right? The media has largely been captured by corporate interests. They own 90% of the airwaves, and you're not going to hear things that do not align with corporate interests. Now, you can have competing corporate interests. Like there are some of rich America that very rich America that want Trump and are fine with him because he gives them massive tax cuts. But a lot of them are for Biden and the establishment corporatocracy who feel that Trump is not a good CEO of America Incorporated because he makes it look bad. So you can have competing interests within the business community. But the general idea is that if it doesn't fit with corporate interests, it will not be on any of these airwaves. So that's one thing. Another was to purge universities of the progressive leftist thought, which they've largely been successful at. So anyway, Trilateral Commission given massive credit for doing this, for gutting the movement towards caring about people and actually a safety net that helps people and a kind of pushback against unfettered capitalism that was just extracting all the resources and destroying people's lives. And they've largely succeeded in destroying that movement to a large degree. And anyway, as it continues, today its membership, Trilateral Commission membership roles include senior figures from U.S. national security establishment, such as former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and former U.S. Director of National Intelligence John Negroponte. So, Keir Starmer's a member of that. And apparently he's one of the only members of Parliament who's a member of the Trilateral Commission. So he's actually more connected. I believe I've read that correctly. He's actually more connected than most members of Parliament in the UK, most higher officials in the UK with this Trilateral Commission. Then Matt Kennard goes on to ask, what did you discuss with Attorney General Eric Holder? Basically, they obtained U.S. government files that showing that Keir Starmer was in Washington, D.C. in 2011, and he met with then Attorney General Eric Holder and 5 other officials at the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, why was that an important time? Well, it was an important time because at that time, the prosecution service, the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK, sorry, I just got to keep mocking the monarchy. They were handling and headed the legal case surrounding Julian Assange. At that time, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy. They had not figured out a way to arrest him yet, and so the legality of all of it was very complicated. They were trying to get Sweden to keep pressing charges. There were no charges, to keep pressing the investigation into completely unfounded sexual assault charges or case. And so he went and met with Eric Holder and then came back to the UK and continued to do all of the pressure, all of the persecution against Julian Assange, a publisher who never published anything false, a publisher who revealed the war crimes of both the UK and the US and many other countries. And they continued persecuting him. And they actually kept pushing Sweden. Let's see, documents from the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, also show that Swedish prosecutors attempted to drop extradition proceedings against Julian Assange as early as 2013. But they were pressured by the UK to not drop those proceedings. So, as you may recall, the goal back then, now they have they're torturing Assange in Belmarsh prison. But back then, he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, and they were hoping to get Sweden to demand extradition so that he would come to Sweden, and then the U.S., which could easily get him from Sweden, would then bring him from Sweden to the U.S. So it was a way so that the U.S. could get their hands on Assange, who they wanted to either kill or torture for revealing the reality of the American empire. And so they kept pressing these charges. Now, Sweden, we learned this later through leaked documents and people coming forward, that Sweden had wanted to drop the investigation because they realized there was nothing there. But Sweden has no backbone. And so they were pressured by the Crown Prosecution Services, headed up at the time by Keir Starmer. So you have a fucking dickwad who's persecuting a journalist, one of the most important journalists to ever live. And now he's the head of the Labour Party. Also, I'm pretty sure he wears blush, okay? Because if you look at videos of him, there's got to be some blush involved. I mean, either that or he's just constantly like, ooh, just constantly like feeling, I don't know, frisky. But let's see. And then the final question from Matt Kennard at the Gray Zone is, why did you develop such a close relationship with the Times newspaper? The Times newspaper, which Keir Starmer apparently was very close with, often had social gatherings with, would talk to them about articles and things like that. Very close relationship. Owned That publication is owned by Rupert Murdoch. So this guy is now the head of the Labour Party, even though he's close with basically, another Rupert Murdoch entity. Over here, many people know Rupert Murdoch created and owns Fox News. In the UK, there's several other channels and newspapers, one of them being The Times. So if this guy's a so-called progressive or a Labour leader, why the fuck is he in bed with The Times? Anyway, I think we know the answer based on the Trilateral Commission membership, that this guy is, at the very least, even if you wanted to argue, Trilateral Commission isn't what it used to be, it's not as powerful as it used to be, or even if you wanted to argue that, even if we wanted to argue, he did some good things as prosecutor and his hands were tied with Assange, even when you argue all of these ridiculous points, which are false, but even if you wanted to do that, still what we're learning is that this guy is one of the establishment. He is one of the kind of corporate inner workings of the empire, the UK-US empire. He's connected to people like Eric Holder. He's connected to people like Rupert Murdoch. They know he is safe. He is no threat to the corporate world, to the unfettered capitalist destruction of our globe. He's no threat to any of that, as Jeremy Corbyn was, as Bernie Sanders was. And so that is kind of part of it, all of this background is a sign to, hey, corporate world, the people that really run things, the billionaires that are really in charge, this guy is not going to get in your way. He's not going to harm you. He's going to defend your empire, your hegemony at every step. And that's why he's fine. You can get behind this. Why you couldn't endorse Jeremy Corbyn. You were scared to death of him because he might do things that interrupt your continued extraction of the wealth and the lives of human beings. But this guy, he's your guy. And they did the same thing with Obama. Before any of us really knew Barack Obama that well, he was running for president, but he'd only been in the Senate for 2 years or something. They had people from the kind of Wall Street, deep state connected people run around and say, no, this guy's your guy. You trust me. He knows the secret handshake. Robert Rubin, the former Treasury Secretary under, I believe, Clinton, was basically Obama's big endorser. Before you and I knew Obama's name, this guy was running around and saying, hey, I'm the former Treasury Secretary, and don't worry, he's Mr. Wall Street. He's our guy. You don't have to be scared of him. He's not gonna regulate you much. He's not gonna get in your way. He's gonna let you to continue extracting all the resources and destroying the planet in your various ways in order to seek greed. And he did just that. They were exactly right. And that's why Wall Street was fine with Obama's presidency. So anyway, seems like it's a very similar thing with Keir Starmer, even though I don't know him very well. But I feel like you just know these few key points, and that's kind of all you need to know. It's interesting how very similar things have been done in the U.S. and UK. Corbyn and Sanders were similar threats, and now those threats have largely been neutralized. I mean, Bernie Sanders could have stood for something longer than he did. He could have led a creation of a third party or something. He could have split the Democratic Party into those who actually give a fuck. And instead he can't even get platform issues, and the platform is meaningless. The platform doesn't fucking mean anything. It's like writing on a piece of napkin, yeah, I'll stop fracking, and then eating it. It's a platform. They act like it means something. I mean, they act like it means something. They'll sit there and fight over tooth and nail over the platform. And ultimately, the Democrats don't follow it anyway, or they change it the following year. So what's it fucking matter? But Bernie Sanders couldn't even get a lot of the platform. I mean, the platform is shit. And the Republican Party, they just gave up the platform this year. They just said, whatever Trump does, that's going to be our platform. Because they knew if they wrote things in the platform that Trump would do one thing one day and something else the next. And then they'd be like, fuck. I don't know. He's talking in North Korea now. I don't know. They don't have any fucking clue what he's going to do. So they just got rid of the platform for the RNC. They just said, whatever Trump does, he's a fascist. We'll just follow him. All right, guys, that's been your moment of clarity. I do a new one almost every single weekday, except sometimes. And you can grab them all at leecamp.com. So every morning you want to see the new one, just go by leecamp.com. I am not asking you for your money. I just asked you before you go, click the share button or click the like button and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the bell because apparently I got to do that too. Oh, the hurdles they fucking make us jump through just so anyone can say anything that actually matters. All right, guys, keep fighting.